Hey everyone, welcome to week 3 or module 3. And I'm going to talk about module 3 in a minute. But before I do that, let's briefly go back and do a bit of a recap from module 2. You looked at characteristics of quality assessments and considered how these particular concepts apply to your discipline and how is this meaningful to you, right? We saw some interesting takes also on practicality and fairness. I will be replying to your posts individually. Remember that the discussion topics are primarily for learner engagement. So I will not respond to every single post or every single thread, but I do give you sort of holistic feedback. I look at all your comments in one place and check to see how well you engage with the class. And if I notice something interesting that you raise, I may respond publicly or just to you privately. So note that discussions in this class are not graded and are here to help you be part of a learning community, a community of colleagues. As you share ideas and reach each other's ideas, will hopefully deepen your understanding of the concept. Now, continuing to module 3, this week, we begin looking at checklists and rubrics. And very briefly, I wanted to show you the resources that are available for this week. There is some redundancy. The videos can cover often the same topic, but because they are relatively short, hopefully it will be a good way for you to just recap and keep nodding. Many of you are already familiar with some of these topics, so I don't think everything will be brand new, but hopefully you will find some tidbits of information that deepen your understanding about ways to create a useful rubric. One important thing I would like to point out here is that the first resource is about checklists. And remember, checklists can be used different ways. In this course, for example, we also use checklists just for like module level tasks. Did you read the intro? Check. Did you post on the discussions? Check. Did you submit this assignment? Check. And so forth. However, checklists can also be used as part of a bigger assignment. It's still the same idea that students have a chance to check off particular tasks. Checklists are really useful when you have a bigger project that has multiple steps. Perhaps first they have to find sources. Then they have to create a draft. Then they have to post their draft for peer review. Then they have to provide peer review. Then they have to incorporate the feedback and create the final assignment. Maybe if this is, for example, a multi-source research paper or a bigger paper on a particular topic. So when you use checklists in those ways, they are a bit different than rubrics, but they still provide a very useful like flow of tasks and accountability for students to say, have you submitted your references? Check. Are your references in APA format? Check. Or MLA format or Chicago style, whatever is the discipline, right? Have you provided peer feedback? Check. And so note that the checklist could be focused on tasks in the particular module or unit or week, which is very common, and we use it in this class and often in other classes as well. But checklists can also be used just for one particular project that's more complex to guide the tasks, right? So often checklists are really for like guiding the learner to complete the tasks, potentially providing a step-by-step task list. Now, rubrics will be a lot more, provide a lot more information and help the learners understand the different criteria of the assignment and the levels of mastery that's required of them. And so you're going to see quite a few examples here. I tried to keep the resources at a lower count, just because each of these could provide you with lots of additional information. I particularly want you to look at the examples of rubrics. This site also has additional examples. And keep clicking around and go to the places where you can find rubrics that are more appropriate for your discipline, right? So you can find quite a lot of rubrics here. The best way to begin using rubrics is understand the basics and then start creating your own, but also looking at models, looking at good examples so that you have a sense of what's out there, and then you can tweak it. Once you see some really good examples, some really great ideas of different criteria and levels of performance, those descriptions, then you can start tweaking it to make sure that it meets the needs of your discipline. Now, you will have to create a rubric and a checklist and submit it, as those are key assignments for this particular module. So I just wanted to mention two key resources regarding. One is, notice that I do have a tutorial video here, and this is helpful to those of you who actually design and teach in Brightspace. I know not everybody in this class will use Brightspace as a learning management system. You could still use the built-in rubric to create a rubric there, and then I'll show you how you can export that and submit it to me. Or if you don't want to use Brightspace because you don't teach with this LMS in your workplace, then you can just create it in Word and just create that table and show me the different levels and the different criterion, right? Now, as I said, this is helpful if you want to use the built-in rubric. And so now I'm going to show you, in the past, students were unsure how to pull a rubric off from their development courses, an actual course, and submit it in this class. So let me show you how you can do that. Now, of course, you cannot do that in this class because you're a learner. You have to have access to a Brightspace shell that is a development shell or an actual course shell where you are the instructor. So you will have access to course admin. And so when you go to course admin, you can go to rubrics. And just because we're pulling up, depending on how many rubrics you have in your class, you can see the ones that are actually linked to an assignment. If you have an active class, this is what it looks like. Notice that this is not only linked to an assignment, but it already has student submissions, in which case I cannot change this rubric anymore, which is fair because we don't want to change a rubric after students began using it and actually submitted assignments, right? And so remember, these are the ones that are linked. So I'm going to actually open one that's not linked and not used so that I can change it. Now you can edit or preview, and you could do other things, of course, here. Also, this is where you can delete one. You can copy one to modify it. So if you have a rubric that you just want to copy and then change it so it could fit another assessment, this is a good way to do it. I like to do this copy feature when I have, for example, a discussion rubric that's pretty good, but I have to modify it because one particular week I have some additional criteria. Maybe there are no peer responses, or there are peer responses, or they only have to do one response. And so I want to modify my discussion rubric. I like usually to make a copy and then just make changes as opposed to starting something from scratch. So you can play around with these if you are, again, a Brightspace user. I'm going to do quickly the preview here because I want to show you, once you have your rubric designed, and I'm going to show you some common mistakes I see. So once you have your rubric designed, let's suppose this is all done and you're all done with it. And so now you're trying to figure out, how will I get this over to my class, to the Assessing the Online Learner class, to submit it as an assignment. Go to Print Rubric and notice here that I'm not going to choose a printer, I'm going to save it as PDF. And so you could still change it if you have a PDF editor, or make sure that you make all your changes. So once you save it as a PDF, you can just submit it to me. You could submit it to me as a Word document if you create it that way, or you could submit it to me as a PDF. I'll be able to see it. So notice, click Save, and just choose where you'd like to save it, right? And so make sure that you know where you put it so that you'll be able to find it. I'm just going to put it on my desktop. But in either case, you could, under the print rubric, save it as a PDF and then upload the PDF into our class as your assignment. And that's the quickest way to do it if you want to use Brightspace to build it in and you don't want to recreate it in a Word document, just so you could submit it to me. Now, I notice this all the time when I observe classes, that occasionally people forget to add criteria descriptions here. Notice this. So that's a problem because your students, this is a placeholder in Brightspace, so it should be changed. I'll go there in a minute. I'm not in an edit mode since I came to the print rubric place. I'm previewing the rubric, right? So I can't change it here, but I'm going to keep this in mind so I can change it when I'm editing it. Another thing I'd like to point out that I often see that's a very common mistake with rubrics is that this should actually be, this is each a criterion one. Ideally, you would have one. So clarity of ideas and grammar should be two different criteria, each described with levels of performance. Otherwise, your students will be, you will have difficulty providing a decent enough description. What does it mean to have clarity of ideas? This refers to a presentation, right? And so you describe, what does that mean? If it's just a paragraph they had to write, or if they had to contribute ideas to a discussion or respond to a prompt you gave them, what does it mean, clarity of ideas, right? And so make sure you don't combine two criteria, because then your description will be not as clear. What happens if the clarity of idea is excellent, but the grammar is not proficient? You lump them together, so now you have difficulty, right? So make sure that one idea per criteria and then describe it. Sometimes we see 3 or even more levels of performance. If you can meaningfully differentiate among those, please do so. If not, you could leave 2 to 3. 2 probably is kind of too binary, like proficient, not proficient. But I'd like to mention, in some cases, it makes very good sense. So you decide from your perspective as an instructor, knowing the complexity of your assignment, knowing your learners, the kinds of background they bring. Don't feel like you always have to do 3 levels. If 2 levels are fine, and maybe you just want to give them a quick feedback, what it is to have proficient, not proficient, that could be maybe a simpler assignment, maybe something that's just a quick practice activity. It's not requiring a lot of preparation. So again, even if you have a simple assignment, you could do like a proficient, not proficient. Of course, if the assignment is more robust, it's more complex, it has more, it requires application of ideas, multi-step, so forth, then having at least 3 levels is probably appropriate, right? You definitely want to let students know when it's not proficient. Sometimes you might also call this improvement needed or revision needed, revision required even, depending on your course. And so there is a lot of variation here of how people prefer to describe. Some faculty use really positive type words or descriptors, right? These are the descriptors. Others try to be very, very direct, like not proficient, unsatisfactory, below expectations, meeting expectations, beyond expectations, or excellent. It's really up to you. I would recommend that you look at the existing rubrics that you find, especially the ones that you find excellent or good guides for your discipline, the types of courses you're teaching, and take a look at those labels, the descriptors, and choose the ones that you feel are best for your course, that align with your philosophy as a teacher, the way you like to provide and structure feedback. So pay attention to these. There's, as I said, you have some individual freedom here to choose the ones that are best aligning with your style of teaching. Now, let's close this and quickly go back to the edit mode. And so you're going to see this in the tutorial also. So I'm not going to spend too much time on this. I just wanted you to see that. You just click here and you could change it, right? And so you could say meets expectations and so forth, if this is what you want to say. So it's very easy to change this. And then of course, once I click away, it automatically saves. Well, saves for now. You still have to make sure that, actually, it is automatically saved. And so here, this is what I mentioned. You know, I do see this occasionally, and it's very unclear for the learner, right? So you definitely want to take this out and add your description. In this case, content, probably this would be, there are two contents here. And so this would be more about the ideas, looks like. And so I would say content organization here. And because both are content, it would be helpful to clarify this. And so content clarity. You can also say something like quality of content and or depth of knowledge. Looks like depth of knowledge shows up. And so that might be the criterion here, right? Depth of knowledge, and then what's the excellent, what is meets expectations, and what is not proficient. And so you get the idea. Think about when you describe these levels, make sure that they can really be distinguished, and you can find that in the students' work. And students can also see the differences in the levels of mastery here based on the description. Sometimes the descriptions simply do not provide enough clarity or grades or levels of mastery that would be meaningful, right? And so make sure that this really truly shows the path. Another important consideration is sometimes people start with the best and sort of going down to the not proficient or not meeting expectations or unsatisfactory. I've also seen it the other way. So start with unsatisfactory and sort of going up. Either way, what you need to do is make sure that your point distribution is meaningful, and so that out of the total, you distribute it consistently, logically, and in accordance to what the levels describe students will need to do. Well, I'm going to stop right here and go back to module 3. Thank you for engaging with the course. I will be in my office hours this week. Note that office hours are listed on the calendar. I did notice that by accident, a few Monday hours were added. That was my mistake. My apologies for that. I corrected that today. I hope I did not confuse anybody. So my office hours are Tuesdays in the evenings, and Thursdays during my lunch break for 30 minutes each. And so those are recurring. And so that's when I'm online in a live Zoom room. And I hope you will log in to join if you have any questions. Thank you so much for all your work in the class. I'll be working today and tomorrow to catch up with all the grading. So by the time office hours roll around, you will be able to see your feedback so you can jump in if you have questions for me. Thank you so much for your time, and I hope you have a great week.